welcome everybody. I'm super happy to share with you at this beginning of the year here our Katalon AI full demonstration. So it's the first time we're going to actually show you live a demonstration of all of our AI powered capabilities in a single connected story. So Chris is going to be the master doing that, the master Jedi doing that for us and showing you how simple it is. But we're really excited because this time of the year we've been going through a lot of planning and strategic conversations across the company to make sure that we are all aligned across departments to get all the awesome capabilities out the door as quickly as possible as we build them, right? So accelerate that release cycle. We also accelerating or expanding rather our beta programs for some of our AI capabilities, and I'll touch on those towards the end of the session today. So really excited to continue to hear feedback from our community, from our users, and enhancing our platform based on what you guys are experiencing. So really cool time of the year. And I know you're all here because you do want to see the demo. That's how the session was titled. So I'll just go through a couple of slides here, actually 4 slides to be very precise, to essentially set the context, right? Kind of help you understand why we feel that these AI capabilities are really game changing from a software quality and testing perspective, and why you should start considering to get your hands dirty and start playing with them and using that in your own projects. Okay, so I'll briefly go here through a recap because I know there's a lot of people that have heard about Katalon but not exactly sure the extent or the how broad the platform goes, and then how we are positioning our AI capabilities, where we're focusing our investments in AI, and then also we'll jump into the demo, which is the star of the show today. So for those of you who are not entirely sure of where our Katalon platform expands towards, maybe you've been exposed to one of our products and you're not sure about the big picture. So this is Katalon, our enterprise-wide software quality platform that spans capability across test planning, test creation, test management, test execution, and test analysis. So your entire testing lifecycle is covered by different capabilities in Katalon today. And in green here in the chart, we have highlighted the areas where we have invested already and already have capabilities that are powered by AI, so that you can make sure that you are maybe you were not aware that some of these areas like test creation, for example, you could be already enjoying AI powered capabilities to make your day-to-day more efficient, more productive, right? So this hopefully is kind of opening your horizons and making sure that you are aware of everything that we have going on. And we'll see each one of those capabilities in a little bit here. But everybody is talking about AI. I've been talking a lot about AI in these first 2-3 minutes. But let's try to separate the noise from and the hype from what the reality is, right? What's already feasible. So when we look at how AI has been changing the software development side of the world, developers are way more productive than ever before, and they are writing a lot more code a lot faster, right? And that's awesome for the business, but it does create additional challenges related to quality, right? It increases the risk of issues in each release because now you have a lot more code being released a lot more frequently. Let me take a step back. You can have a lot more code being released a lot more frequently. Doesn't mean yet that all of the companies are doing that, right? The reason they're not doing that mostly, from what you guys have been telling us, our customers have been telling us yourselves, is that the software testing life cycle is still not as or leveraging as much AI, not enjoying as much productivity powered by AI as our counterparts on the development side. So therefore, testing is not being able to keep up in enabling that in tremendous speed from development now to go seamlessly all the way to the hands of the users. So that's the current state that we've been observing based on in the year that just wrapped. And the only way that we see that testers in the software testing lifecycle can keep up is really if we arm them with AI-powered capabilities, right? That's kind of natural. But the challenge there, although it sounds simple, hey, we have, co-pilots for developers. Let's just, put the same technology in the hands of the testing crowd. The way testers look at AI-powered use cases is different than developers. And this is a whole topic for a different webinar that we're going to do in the future. But just know that we cannot simply apply AI in the same way for developers and testers. We have tried to do that ourselves. And I mentioned earlier a few beta programs we've learned that with actual factual information and factual data and feedback from you guys, many of you guys that have participated on that in the past. So we've been learning a lot in the past year so that we can bring you the best AI-powered capabilities here that are actually making a difference for you. So we see that AI will fuel testers to help them become faster, to help them gain additional insights, better insights to make decisions, and also to optimize their overall testing process. I mean, that's the whole point, is really bringing more productivity and efficiency in the whole testing lifecycle so that the speed and the complexity of capabilities and business functions that the company releases to the end users is able to accelerate as much as the IT side of the world is accelerating with AI. And ultimately, we don't see AI replacing testers or anyone. It's really a tool that will supercharge all of us. It will make sure that we can do our jobs much better, much faster, much more comprehensively, because it's not magic. We have not only to be in the loop, we have to be in the driver's seat so that this is actually feasible. And we've been learning a lot in the past year and are very confident that this is the way to go. And that's why we've been building AI in three key areas based on different use cases. So regression testing being one of them. Our flagship AI product right now is called TrueTest. And it's an AI-powered automated test generation capability that we'll dive into details today. Takes care of the regression testing use case. Then generative AI for testers is something akin to the Copilot for the developers. It's really something that's augmenting and enhancing the capabilities of any testing professional that is using Katalon, and we've seen amazing results so far. So you'll see that today. And then throughout the platform, we have been peppering in different AI-powered capabilities to make existing features, established features better, faster, and quite frankly, to help us on the product side innovate and bring innovations to you much faster because we don't have to build things from scratch either, right? So we're leveraging AI in visual testing, smart test scripts, analytics. It's a big area that we're investing on and getting great results. And then a whole gamut of different areas across the platform that are not necessarily present in the UI, so you don't even see, but that are making our platform better, more complete, more resilient, and more scalable. So those are the three main areas that we've been investing on. And the last slide here, like I said, the fourth slide, just a quick summary of what you will be seeing, just in the next few minutes, which is the main AI-powered capabilities that we have been building. So TrueTest, I just mentioned before, giving you the ability to autonomously create regression tests, and in helping you prioritize the business critical areas of your applications. Manual test generation based on GPT is something big also that's coming from an integration with Jira. Studio Assist inside of Katalon Studio is an AI-powered, think of it as the co-pilot equivalent that the developers use. Visual testing, so making sure that we can apply or validate the quality of the different images that we capture, so the baseline and all the new the evolution of those captures, make sure that we identify any and spot any differences in a much more efficient way. And then the virtual data analyst, which is giving you actionable insights that are now much more actionable than before because we're leveraging AI to give you that capability instantaneously. So without getting into the details of each one of them, which I'm very tempted to do, but I won't, I'll hand it over to Chris so that he can actually show you these things in practice. And then as he goes through those different capabilities, feel free to start throwing some questions there in the Q&A panel, like Lucio said. We'll be monitoring, trying to answer them either live or through the Q&A panel as well. So with that, Chris, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. So let me start sharing and let me know when you guys can see it.
Yeah, we see it.
All right. So first things first is that we are going to be focusing on the true test capabilities, right? So true test is the capabilities of taking web traffic and turning them into test cases. The reason why we want to do this is because we want to essentially create a regression testing test suite based on the user's actions that is based on your application. So if you were to have this running in the background and making all that test suite created, you will then have a regression test suite that is strictly targeting the features and functionalities that your applications are going to be needing to cover when it comes to the new deployment of your application. We see this a lot of times with customers who are making transitions from other automation tools. They don't want to do it because they would lose a number of test cases and assets, and they essentially just start from zero and then work their way up, right? There's a balancing act of sorts where you have to have, we'll still use the old product, but we kind of want we have to do the same amount of work for the other, and we slowly transition out. This is something that can be problematic, a balancing act, and something that a lot of people, when it comes to the QA space, really don't want to take the risk of, right? So we have a way of incorporating that very easily. The main thing is that this is set up. Once you set it up, which is just with a few lines in your in your header page, you'll be able to then capture the information and then turn it into what is called a journey map, which is what you see right here. This journey map will be able to show you, some information on like what interactions are taking place, how, where are we going from. So you're seeing the flow of the typical users. So typically, if you were on an e-commerce site, the first thing would be log in, go into the web page, and then go into X, Y, or Z functionalities. That branching capability is what you see right in front of you. We also have the ability of turning those flows into user flows, which is very common trafficked experience in the application. So in this case, we see verify successful checkout process on the homepage. We also give this a priority so that we can actually start identifying what user flows are actually taking place. And if you want to create all these test cases, by all means, do so. We have a number of ways of going into the test case themselves, and this is in fact that first test case that we saw, and we can show you each individual steps within our test stop solutions. These test cases, once created and once generated, can then easily be incorporated into your test suites simply by going into your execution. So here we have one such execution right here, which is a test run. And we actually can see a number of results, in this case, visual checkpoints. We'll get into that one a little bit later, but just a little foreshadowing. We also can start showcasing all of the test cases that we have generated and store them inside of test ops view simply by going into our testing sections, test case, and you'll see it in the upload data subfolders. So here we start seeing all of our test cases shown here, and we can easily access each and every one of them and start looking at the history, the test result history, the actual execution timeframes, the typical information you would see when incorporating test ops into your, day-to-day testing repository. Not only that, right, but the actual execution of it and maintenance and creation of it, this can all be automated, right? So as you are deploying new versions of your applications, you would hope that these new features would gain more traction, and those actual features will then need to be covered on a more regular basis. This is something that is going to be the main benefit of true tests. These are continuously being created and continuously being maintained. So that's the important part, is that we are always going to be running these test cases because they're always going to be changing and they're always going to be reflecting the actual base features that our applications are trying to make sure and validate are working to spec. So that's true tests, right? We have that running in the background. We have it accessible in test ops, but we also have the ability of showcasing it inside of Katalon Studio as well. So these are not just test cases that once they're created, you can't touch. You can actually go inside of test ops, get the repository, and then you can actually start importing them into Katalon Studios and doing any modifications. So let's say for, in this case, this test case, we want to incorporate, say, visual checkpoints, which as of right now isn't the case, but will become a feature added onto at a later version, right? Where all these steps, all these transitions to new pages will have its own respected visual checkpoints added to it. Right here, we start seeing that there's a number of, enhanced clicks, set text, etc. We can actually modify this and save it to save it to the repository, much in the same way as we normally would. And we have these new test cases to run on a regular basis. Now, this is true tests in its most foundational perspective, right? But true test is not going to be the only way that we're going to be creating and utilizing AI-based content for you guys to automate your testing automation. We actually have another solution, Studio Assist, which is a add-on inside of Katalon Studio. In this case, we can go into this project. Now, you see no steps here. That's fine. We have a script done in comments, right? So Studio Assist is going to do two things. Two things. It is going to turn a comment section. So as you can see here, we're going to open the browser, navigate to our URL, enter in some information, etc. And also, we also have the ability to translate code into plain text. So this is going to be a really good, powerful solution for people who are coming from the business side, right? Business users do not need to have an expertise in automation engineer. They don't need to know how to script in a given language. I'm sure many people who are attending today could probably list about 3 or 4 languages that every automation solution requires. For us, it's Groovy. But what if that wasn't a requirement? What if that's not something necessary? We actually incorporate that by simply right-clicking a highlighted comment, going down to Studio Assist, and we go into Generate Code. What is happening right now is that we're going to use AI to then create code for us inside of our script purely through text. Not only that, but the output that we put into our test scripts shows it line by line. So the first line is that we're going to open a web browser. The second line, we're going to navigate to the URL listed here. And as a business user, you now have the educational resources to, if you wanted to, learn the code and syntax of your given scripts, right? We can easily do the exact opposite. Like here, we have our script. Not much going on. We can easily just highlight this section. So a lot of things going on here. And yeah, it already has its own comments, but we can easily generate our own, and we can explain the code, and it will be shown below. Okay. So as we can see here, we start seeing this example, and we can actually start understanding what the actual test case itself is doing. So, as someone who's coming into an environment, or when it comes to understanding a test case, because one person is not going to be is not going to be maintaining all test cases, you can easily start generating documentation through all of your testing efforts. And as anybody who is a developer or has done worked in the dev space, documentation can take quite a while, right? So, what if you can just right click, drag, or left click drag, and then just right click and generate a documentation comment for the entire test case. That's going to save you minutes for every test case you work on, and it's going to save potentially hours, depending on locations of the team, where we don't have to wait to ask questions on what's going on, what's the logic behind this test case, and this is not just for the syntax that we have inside Katalon Studios. It also works for regular expressions. It works for general logic. It works and interprets the code that you want in a natural language. Now, Studio Sys is a great tool. Again, it's not just for documentation. It's not just for business users. We are utilizing this as a way to increase the collaborations between multiple silos that are still in place. Your developers, your automation engineers, your business users, and how we can have them all create the same test assets in the same environment using the same environment and tool, rather than having them separate in their own different respected areas. Now, we have talked about true tests. We talked about Studio Sys. This is all about creation. But let's go a step further and let's go back into that validation of our visual testing, right? Visual testing is something that manual testers do without really even thinking about it, right? It is about verifying if the actual UI is meeting to our expectation. For anyone who has ever done HTML code and has modified anything from a visual standpoint, one little thing can happen and the entire page can crumble. However, from a automation tools perspective, if the UI element is still present on that page at that time, then we can still click on it. It's still going to be something that is visible, and it's still going to be something that it's going to say functionally it works, but visually it's not meeting to our user experience. Here we have a case of showcasing, that visual checkpoint. We can easily incorporate this by adding a step. For the sake of time, I won't go into how to, well, I actually could. I could take a little detour. We can go into add these steps very easily in these existing test cases. So if you simply just go into add, there we go, add a step, go into this, go into the drop-down menu, and we can go into the T's. All right. So here we have the action, the ability of take area screenshot, take element screenshot, take full page, take screenshot, right? But they have as a checkpoint variety. Now, each of these have some special input, but you can easily just, you can hover over and you can understand what a given step looks like. As you can see here in the yellow, it shows you the parameters and what you expect in the return. But these as a checkpoint varieties are the visual testing capabilities, right? You will simply need to take a screenshot, run your test case, you'll be able to have a screenshot saved into test ops. You need to save it as a baseline, right? And then once you run it again, that baseline will then have a comparison that you see here. So here we have a baseline image shown here before to the the recent execution in our checkpoint. Now, from the naked eye, you're not seeing any differences, right? But the reason why is because we're looking at the old-fashioned pixel by pixel comparison. Now, you probably have done at some point pixel by pixel comparisons, and you know how it can be very sensitive. In this situation, we want to showcase that the pixel by pixel comparison can show you false negatives and some potentials. So here we have, an image. where the red sections right here are actually going to be raising red flags. However, what if we were to incorporate AI-based technology to make better, smarter decisions, right? We can easily start switching to, say, a layout perspective. And instead of those, false negatives of like, oh, instead of check marks or one, two, three, we now see them listed out here below, right? This is the power of visual testing. It starts looking at the content and say, okay, is anything really different? From a layout perspective? Is everything kind of aligned where it's supposed to be? It looks like in this case, that is indeed the fact. What we also can do is that we can do a comparison on text-based content as well. So for anyone who's ever had to analyze the results of, say, a transaction on an e-commerce site, you'll start coming into the realization that maybe the actual return value is not as accurate as we want, right? Maybe for whatever reason, 2 plus 2 on the receipt now equals 65. This is all going to be a problem for something, and it can be something that you miss from manually doing this yourself. We actually have the ability of looking at that, translating it and comparing it into our baseline image and see if that actually is the case. So here you start seeing all of this green means we have all good comparisons. And now what we can easily do is that we can then start saying this is a marked test case or marked as pass test case, or we can say that this is failures. We as a users will have the power to do that decisions if and when there is a mismatch taking place. Now, one thing to also add is that in the pixel by pixel comparisons, you did see this strict to relax capabilities. This is going to be a way for us to actually start looking into, having more of a, as better, lack of a better word, a relaxed policy on on the pixel by pixel comparisons. So if one pixel on the screen is slightly off, you're not going to get a problem, right? You aren't going to, raise a false negative as you see here by using the strict policy. In fact, we can easily transition into the relax. It's going to take some time to generate that new result, but that essentially can be a way to appreciate it. Now, we've done creation, we've added verifications. What is the next step in the AI capabilities? Well, we want to help out not just in the automation space, but also in the manual test space. As a manual tester, you want to start focusing on a number of things, especially if you're making that transition from manual to automation. Manual testers want to take their actual backlog of requirements and they want to turn them into manual test cases. We can do that, right? That is done very easily within our Jira integrations. Inside here, we have a backlog of a number of requirements. We have a description, and we can easily, from once we add the add-on to your Jira instance, we can easily generate a manual test case. So this manual test case is being generated in front of everyone. And let's just look at it a little bit. So here we start seeing, all the steps from our requirements done in a very specific manner, and we can actually start seeing all of these test cases. Again, these test cases can be created inside of Jira, and once created, will be shown inside of, if I go back to, there we go. All right, they can all be stored inside here, and we can actually start seeing them listed in our test case perspective, or in our test case repositories. So these are going to not be in the AI generated if it's tied to a different project, but it will be tied. You'll see another one called manual, and those manual test cases can be run, can be executed, and can be reported inside of test ops. This again is so that we help people understand that 100% automation is not going to be going to be possible for people in the who are still doing a majority of manual. So we want to give them the space and tools that they can actually start creating these test cases in the automation space and in the manual test space so that they can work through the transitional process and maturing process of going into that, manual to automation and all the way to the bleeding edge of automation, which we are showcasing today. The last thing we want to show you guys today is our virtual data analysis. The virtual data analysis is simply a way for us to help you analyze the results, right? So here we have an example of it. We have three questions that we are going to go through, or that we can go through. The how's the upcoming release, analyzing the past common errors, and also seeing how stable our tests are on the last 7 days. Again, this is not to replace any other professional opinions. However, it is always good to have another opinion that can, maybe highlight an area that you may have missed, right? We can easily start going into one of these areas. We have a release shown here, and we have an actual generated observation through our virtual data analysis, and we can actually start seeing that shown here, right? So it gives us a conclusion, some trends it's identified, some suggestions on improvements. These are all things that for people who are, experts may want to have something to, verify. Again, they just want to say, I feel this is what our testing looks like. Can we get some verification? Great. Looks like VDA, approves of that as well. Again, it's just another insight into it. But also, if you're coming in and into the automation space and you're not familiar with it, maybe as a tester or as some team lead of some sort, you want to have the ability to have impactful, powerful conversations, but you yourself may not have the ability to read through the analytics to gain the insights needed. We do have many dashboard capabilities to show you that. However, what we can do is that we can just put it in plain text, showcasing where you're at right now with your testing, and what are some ways to improve it for the next iteration, in the next phase, the next cycle. So right now, that is all the AI capabilities. And I say right now because we are an ever evolving solution, always going to be incorporating new technologies, new ways, new methods to improve your guys' lives as people of quality. And also, we're going to incorporate these not in just creating test cases, but we're going to help it with analyzing, improving the quality of life in your testing environments, reducing the redundancies that can take place, and many other hurdles that you guys tackle on a day-to-day basis. With that being said, that is the end of the demonstration. I can pass it off back to Alex for further slides and or probably close out this webinar.
Unmuting myself. Yeah, we have quite a few questions. I've been trying to tackle them on the chat, and so has Lucio, actually on the Q&A box. So thanks everyone for the questions. I do have some, because there were in the beginning here, I answered a lot of true test related questions. So let me share here something more to try and proactively address some of those. Let me see here. Can find my screen back.
Well, you find that, Alex, some of the questions that actually a frequent question that came through the chat is whether this going to be shared. The recording is going to be shared later. So the answer is yes. If you showed up late or you needed to leave earlier or whatever the case would be, we will send an email to all the registrants of the webinar with the recording of the test, and also you can find this webinar and many others at katalon.com/webinars. So you will be able to rewatch it there on demand.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Lucio. So just kind of diving into true tests here. From the questions, I feel like it's important to kind of help everybody understand the use case, right, that we're trying to address here. Why did we create true tests? Well, all of us that are in testing, we always struggle with this with this question, right? Do we focus more time on testing new features, or do we focus more time on regression testing? And the reality is, depending on the project, depending on the application, you will decide to spend more time in the new features and just a little bit in regression testing, or the opposite, right? This is a business critical application, cannot break the user experience, so I'll prioritize regression testing and do as much new feature testing I can. So, and then there's obviously the balance, right? Finding the right balance, and that's always a challenge. And one of the things that we decided to do with TrueTest, as we were thinking about how to approach that use case of regression testing, is we could approach it as people always try to approach, which is starting from the requirements, right? Looking at the requirements, looking at the existing tests that we already have created in the past, looking at the ones that we already have automated in the past, and then kind of trying to um, uh, do to solve that problem with the same set of variables, right? And from my experience, we've been trying to do that with test automation for the past 22, 23 years. And we really haven't been able to. Well, automating is not difficult. The difficulty is really, obviously it's not easy, but it's not the most difficult part. Once you automate it, then now you inherit a set of automated tasks that you have to maintain, right? And that maintenance is usually what keeps growing and growing and growing, in terms of the effort that you have to dedicate to keep those automated regression tests always running, always up to date, right? So but relying on requirements to do that is not very effective, because requirements are inherently ambiguous. Doesn't matter if you're using BDD, if you're using, just, normal user stories, if you're using actual BDR documents, right? And things like that. They're always inherently ambiguous. So the tests that you generate from requirements for the regression testing purposes are never going to be complete, and you're always going to have to rely on your gut to determine which are the ones that I always have to run, that are business critical, and so on and so forth. And yes, you can rely on your business team to tell you that, but even for the business team, it will be their opinion, it will be their SME expertise telling you, or informing you what's more important. There's subjectivity there. So what we thought is, hey, let's look at an area where there's no doubt in terms of what's important. There's absolutely zero, question. There's no debate as to what's really important for the business. And where is that? Well, that's where the users are. That's what the real users are navigating. That's what they are interacting with the application. That's the business functions they are exercising in your application, whether they're moving money from one account to the other, they're booking flights, they're booking hotel rooms, they are buying products, they're checking out, those are all business critical transactions that they are doing in your production system. So if we take that and understand how they're doing those things, and we make sure that those things are not breaking in each release, there is nobody that can tell you that those are not the important set of tests that you need to run. Those are not the critical ones. Those are not the priority ones, right? There's zero question there from anybody, because the business will agree that's what the users are doing. That's how your company is making money, right? Or achieving your business metric, because that's how the users are navigating there. And then on the IT side, nobody can dispute that either, because yeah, the requirements might have envisioned something different, but what the user is actually doing is that. So, our requirements, uh, specify development to create something in a certain way, but users are using it in a different way. So you learn from that, right? And not only you learn, but you also preserve that experience that they are having in production. So that's why we created TrueTest, approaching it from the user's perspective as opposed to the requirements perspective. And that's why we say the first use case that TrueTest is addressing is really that regression testing, things that are working and that are business critical. Let's make sure they do not break inside your next release, right? So it enables you to see TrueTest enables you to see what the users are actually doing in that nice user journey map, So you can follow exactly what the users are doing, how they're interacting, how they're going from one page to the other, and the main activities they're doing in each of those pages. Based on that, it automatically generates for you automated tests that you can run in Katalon Studio, in test ops, or in your CI/CD pipeline, just like you do today normally, as when you create the test yourself. So no changes there. And then it enables you to also visualize how much of your test coverage or how good your test coverage is in your current release based on how the users are navigating. So you know how users are navigating. Have you tested all of those things that they are doing in production, right? And kind of and what is the gap? So before you release, you actually know if you have covered everything that the user are doing or not. Now, one common question that we get is that's one part of the testing effort or the testing lifecycle. You should also test the new features, right? Of course, True Test is not addressing all of your testing needs. True Test is addressing one use case of the entire testing lifecycle, which happens to be a use case that you either spend too much time and effort in it, or you don't spend enough time in it. In either case, it's a huge problem for your organization. It's a struggle, right? How do you find that right balance? And there's never a good answer for it. You either spend too much time to preserve that user experience, but then you don't release new features as fast as you should because you don't have the time to test those new features at the speed they require, or you're releasing the new features fast, but you're compromising on the stability of your application, on the experience of your users, because you're relying usually in gut feel, like, oh, I know my users, I know my application. I'll do some quick exploratory testing here, some smoke testing, and yeah, it's okay. Let's move forward. So you're doing that based on your own perspective, which is risky, right? If you think about it, what if you get sick? What if the team gets sick, right? So either way, those two scenarios are scenarios that we have been seeing our customers struggle over the last several years, and really not believing that, oh my God, it's 2022, 2023, 24, and we still don't have a good solution for that. So what AI is doing for Katalon now is enabling us to unlock that additional value and giving you a fully automated way to generate those regression tests that are important for your business. Nobody can dispute that. And then take that burden of regression testing off your back. And the second question that follows that statement is, all right, now I have a new release, I have new code in production. Lots of those tests will break. What do I do? That's the maintenance that you said you were trying to address. That's a great question. And somebody asked there in the Q&A, so I'll just answer here as well. Well, as you have new code in production, new release comes out, the users now are navigating in different ways. They are maybe interacting with a new button, with a new screen altogether, right? Or with a new flow altogether that did not exist before. Or maybe the entire checkout process of your application has changed. It's still the checkout flow, but it changed. So those tasks that you had before are going to fail if you just run them. So how TrueTest helps in that scenario? Well, as TrueTest detects new user patterns, new user behaviors, users navigating through new flows, users clicking on new buttons, on new fields, hovering on different parts of the screen responding in different ways. As TrueTest detects all that, it basically knows that it's different from before. So it regenerates all the tests that have been impacted and gives you always a suite of fully working automated tests that can be used for regression testing in your current release cycle. So you do not have to spend time anymore going through tests that have broken and then update them by hand so that they actually run, because you never have the time to do that properly, right? Or you spend too much time there and not enough time on the new features testing. So TrueTest will automatically make sure that all of your tests are always reflecting the latest behavior of the users in production. And therefore, you can always run those tests in your current version, in your pre-production environment that you're preparing for releasing, in the next release date. So not only test creation is what true test address, so automated test creation of automated tests, but it also takes care of the automated maintenance of those regression tests to make sure they're always reflecting what your users are doing in your production application. Another question I had there is, okay, can we just use true test in production? Or can we use that in also in our pre-production environments, dev environment, QA environment, UAT, staging, right? Absolutely. That's the second biggest use case for TrueTest. If you now install TrueTest in your, let's say, QA environment, everything that's being tested there, be it by a manual tester, even if you're running automated tests in your QA environment, or if you have product owners or the business team in your QA environment, just doing exploratory testing, all of those things can also be captured by TrueTest. And what comes out of it? Well, the user journeys. So now the user journey is reflecting what your QA users, right, are doing in that environment. And what's the output of that? Automated tests that essentially go through everything that the people that were going in or going through the application in the QA environment were going through. So if you had automated tests that were running against the QA environment, TrueTest will see those because they're basically interacting with the browser. And then it will generate flows for those and consequently will generate tests, automated tests. So those will be tests that you can use inside your new release that are basically automated, that have automated the testing of your new features. So those new features are not in production yet. And you can use those automated tests as part of your CI/CD inside your sprint itself, right? To detect any regressions within the sprint for those new features. In addition to the automated regression tests that you're bringing from production, with true tests in production. So you can have these two use cases combined to really broaden your testing coverage to really tackle regression testing based on how things are working in production, and also new feature testing, automating the new feature testing in your pre-production system within the sprint itself, which is major, right? Which is also another struggle. So I just wanted to clarify those because there were excellent questions in the chat or in the Q&A panel, and typing up those answers that doesn't do justice to just explaining that. So I just wanted to clarify there. I don't know, Chris, if you have any other things to add to that based on your experience too.
No, none at all. In fact, I have been addressing many of the questions, and there's a lot of good questions in here, as much as I possibly can. I guess what I could do instead of typing them out, we can just simply kind of go over them
Yeah,
and read them out.
let's pick them up.
So someone asked, Arup, does Studio Assist code generation work as expected for BDD steps? So we didn't go into details of this. There is video content that I personally am creating, going through the process of how to create these test steps. Studio Sys is not like BDD where it's syntax based. It's going to be interpretive. So for things like, you know, open up a new browser, you could just say create a new browser. It'll still have that interpretation taking place and going through with it. There is something to note, which is that you're going to be referencing test assets. So if you're going to be saying something like, I want you to click on the button or the login button, what you need to do is that you need to point to the login button in the object repository. There's a whole entire Academy course that I've created, as well as some enablement to go through this process. But it's really straightforward. You're simply just going to reference it by name in the object repository. So if you say login button is the object repository name, then you can easily just input that into your test case, right? So click on the login button, and then it will interact with the application in that fashion. Unlike BDD, where it's going to be more syntactical and you're kind of referencing everything in a very specific and precise language, the interpretation of it, right, is more, I'm going to point to an asset and I'm going to use my own language to create the test steps rather than follow a strict syntactical guidelines that would either compile or, would execute. Um, let's see. Let's see. Already got that. That's being answered. So the other things that some other people are looking for is true tests with data sensitivity. We are taking in the precautions of data sensitivity. True test is not going to be capturing username, passwords, and other sensitive information like that. Um, Once the test cases are created, they will be focusing on having the users input that data, whether that be dummy data or some specific credentials, so that they can go into the application after the fact using those credentials inside the test case. This, of course, is probably the best way for us to do it because we don't want to, we don't want to accidentally capture and have any data breach taking place. So that is being considered. It is being addressed. And once True Test comes out of beta, we will have documentation showcasing that and verifying it for everyone to utilize.
Yeah, and just
Uh,
one thing to
yeah, go
add
ahead.
there, Chris. So in summary, TrueTest, there is the agent component, which is basically added to your application code. So it's a JavaScript tag that is added to your application code. So every time, which is the standard technology for real user monitoring, if you're familiar with those technologies that especially production operations team use to monitor how users are experiencing the web application, right? If they're running into issues that impact the user experience, there are real user monitoring tools for that to detect and alert and issue alerts to the production support team so they can act on it, bring the application back up, and those kinds of things. So we're leveraging the same technology for real user monitoring, which is essentially adding that JavaScript code, one-line code into the application itself, the application code itself. So when you talk to development or your operations team, they're already very familiar with that. It's not something that you would talk to them and they're like, "Oh no, cannot touch the application code at all. Like we are in the testing team." Like no, like do not worry. Those conversations go really well because they're like, "Oh yeah, it's just like when we added the full story, which is one of those tools, or Dynatrace into the web application, or Pendo, or which is a marketing monitoring tool. Like so, all of these technologies for monitoring the users in the browser are very like common these days or for the past 10 plus years. So TrueTest is not introducing anything new here. We're leveraging that technology, and as part of that technology, what you do is, or what TrueTest does, is it basically uh, automatically removes at the source, so in the user's browser itself, all the PII data. So any data that is sensitive, like PII and other types that you can add, never leave the user's browser. So TrueTest never sees those things. It's not one of those cases where we capture a lot of data and then now in our in our service and in our data center, we have to now secure the data, et cetera, et cetera. No, like we do not capture anything you do not want to be captured, right? So, and again, we're leveraging proven technology from other domains like operations, for example. And therefore we're not trying anything new here, crazy. It's just following what's been proven and accepted by security teams, by development teams, by IT teams, and so on. Now, what we do with that data that we capture from the user sessions is different, right? Whether people use the other, operations tools used to monitor issues and then send alerts so that people can bring back the web application up, we use the user session information to automatically generate tests for you. So that's the main difference, right? But the tech, underlying capturing tech, is the same. And we did not want to introduce anything new, exactly to prevent going to those conversations where you have to now explain and justify to the development team and the production support team and the security team, right? Oh, we need this thing so we can do better testing. Like, no, it's just like, hey, just like you guys added Dynatrace to our operations tools, we're just gonna ask you to add the same type of technology for a different purpose, which is for testing. So I just want to compliment that. I guess we're running out of time here, but we'd love to hear your feedback on today's session. We try to make it very practical, very hands-on. That's, how we titled the session today, kept keeping the slides to a minimum. Hopefully it was we were able to achieve that goal. But please let us know here through the poll that you see on your screen. We would love to hear your feedback so we can get better the next time and always keep learning. That's what we've been all about in the past few years here at Katalon. Um, as Lucio said, we're going to send out the recording as soon as it's processed. And we're going to go through the remaining questions here that we haven't been able to get to and send those over to the people that have asked as well. Lucio, any final words?
No, that is it. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Alex and Chris, thank you so much for all the insights and the demo. It was incredibly amazing. Thank you to all the participants for being here, regardless of the time of the day. And I want to remind you all, this will be on demand on Katalon.com/webinars. And with that, I hope everyone have a wonderful day. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you soon. Thank you all. Have a good day.